I will venture to get you an answer on that, and maybe we can talk about it, and we'll circle back. I will have to circle back on that one, but we'll circle back. But I will have to circle back with you. Let me give you a very specific example. I'll circle back. I hate to disappoint you. Circle back. That's an excellent question. Circle back. I hate to disappoint you, but we will venture to circle back.
This president knew back in January. Why didn't he tell us? Why did he warn us?
There are a number of ways to combat misinformation. One of them is circle back.
You told us that Trump was invincible, that Hillary was in a prison, right?
I don't really have any predictions for you on that. I can circle back. Let me see if I can get more detail for you on that. Circle back.
I signed something saying that if I'm wrong, I can go to prison. Did you?
We'll try to get to as many questions as possible. I'll circle back. I don't have anything more for you.
We'll circle back.
And that communication has been lacking.
Circle back.
Well, as you know,
We'll circle back.
let me give you a very specific example. I'll circle back. I hate to disappoint you. Circle back. That's an excellent question. Circle back. I hate to disappoint you, but we will venture to circle back with all of you.
What the fuck, bro?
We are TFR, Truth Frequency Radio.
Here we go, hour one. And greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew. I'm coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. This is where the past meets the future. In here, the results are always positive. We might go a little past your imagination, but have no fear. You will be safely traveling with us. So happy you could be here. Today is Easter Sunday. And I promised you my Easter story. It's lengthy. It's about an hour long, but there's a lot of details in it. Some things maybe you've heard before, but you haven't heard them put this way and together in this manner so that it tells the entire story of the making of the Christ. It's not really a religious story. It is more a spiritual story. We don't get too churchy here, but we do read some ancient records, and I think you'll enjoy it. So a lot going on this weekend, some of which we're going to talk about. A lot of it we're not going to talk about. Just not the appropriate time, and I don't think we have all the facts yet. And I think that as this week plays out, what is going on in world news will make itself known. The propaganda that we're being fed by the fake stream news is certainly deceiving the world and making a bed that I hope they will lie in for lying. We are a truth-loving people. I'm not saying we don't like to be told a story every now and then, but we don't like to be deceived. And we're at a point in our lives where we feel like we have been deceived quite a bit. We don't want to be deceived anymore. We want to be told the truth. So I want to welcome all my friends on Foxhole. Thank you for showing up. Foxhole has a great feed. We are coming to you live through the Truth Frequency Radio Network on audio, and that is going out through TalkStream Live all over the world, all AM and FM stations and rebroadcasts, and we don't even know how many thousands of people listen through that media, but it's a lot. I know I probably have a bigger audience than CNN, which is not saying a lot right now. But we also are streaming to you live on video platforms like Foxhole and Twitch, Facebook, DLive, even Twitter, YouTube, Rumble, Rockfin. That's a lot of platforms, all simultaneously, all live. So we'll try to stay with YouTube as long as we can. We're going to probably get about halfway through this program before we have to say goodnight to YouTube. As you know, Google routinely violates our constitutional civil rights here. We don't allow that. So before they get a chance to censor us for telling the truth, we will censor them. And that's just the way it is. So if you're listening on YouTube, you're going to hear about half of tonight's broadcast, and then you're going to have to switch over to one of the other free speech platforms. We're also out there, of course, on all social media. We're on Truth Social. I'm at Vision Officer, if you want to find me on Truth Social. And I'm also have the best Discord page on the internet, period. So if you want to go there, you can research until you go blind. There's so much information there, it'll just smoke your brain. It does mine every single week. I'm also on Telegram, and I don't really go to Telegram a lot. There's just so much crap. It's a free speech platform, and for that I enjoy it, but you really have to sift. It's very difficult to negotiate Telegram. I'm also on Instagram, but we don't stream on Instagram. It's a very, very, very tiny audience, only a few hundred people, but I am on Instagram, and you can find me easy enough under my name, Brooks Agnew. So I want to get started tonight. I want to talk about this story that everyone sort of knows. If you've ever watched an episode of Peanuts, you've probably heard this story. But we're going to take it toward the end of the ministry and not the beginning so much of his life. But although we have to put these things in perspective because it tells the complete story. You know, Jesus and his family left Bethlehem with his parents before his second year and went to Egypt. You know that, right? I traveled many cities in Egypt, all over Egypt, for a long time. But the one that contained the story of the resurrection was in Abydos. And the temple of Seti I is situated in Abydos. It's one of the most important archaeological sites in ancient Egypt. Abydos is located in Upper Egypt, about 10 kilometers from the Nile River. You have to kind of pass by Nag Hammadi to get there. Now, Seti sent his engineers to look for a specific site upon which to build his temple to the passion of Isis and Osiris. Seti wanted his temple to be built upon an even more ancient site known as the Osirian. And it was believed to have been founded around 3470 BC. In that ancient time, most of the inner sea region was living in barbarism. It wasn't a big civilization. They didn't have a lot of trade. They were mostly local fishermen and farmers. And they had yet to recover, from the devastation that was caused by earthfall in 5293 BC. That's a long, long time to exist in primitive conditions. According to the legend, a prophet of Nethys and called Azhad unified the tribes living alongside the Sphinx River and established his capital as Sothis. He became the first pharaoh of Osirian, and he and his successors were revered by the populace as god kings. Now, Osiris ruled ancient Egypt in the 25th century BC, having inherited the kingship from his ancestors in a lineage stretching back to the creator of the world, Ra or Atum. His queen is Isis. Although he was the first pharaoh, Set craved this power and ended up murdering him and cutting his body into several parts and scattering them across the known world. Now, Set is one of the children of the earth god Geb and the sky goddess Nut. Osiris's death is followed by a period in which Set assumes the kingship, but the murderer does not hold on to that reign because Isis searches for her husband's body with the aid of Nephthys. It's Phthys. Nephthys. When searching for or mourning Osiris, the two goddesses are often likened to falcons or kites, possibly because kites travel far in search of carrion, because the Egyptians associated their plaintive calls with cries of grief, or because of the goddess's connection with Horus, who is often represented as a falcon. So Osiris represented the life-giving divine power that was present in the Nile's water and in the plants that grew after the flood. There was no dam in those days, so the replenishing of the farmlands of Egypt was a result of the flooding of the banks, which occurred every year right after the rising of the star Sirius in the south. The Nile flows north, so the life energy of the river was associated with the stars rising. The goddesses do find the scattered body parts of Osiris and restore the body, often with the help of other deities, including Thoth, a deity credited with great magical and healing powers, and Anubis, the god of embalming and funerary rites. Osiris becomes the first mummy, and the god's efforts to restore his body are the mythological basis for Egyptian embalming practices, which sought to prevent and reverse the decay that follows death. Now, this part of the story is often extended with episodes in which, Set or his followers try to damage the corpse, and Isis and her allies must protect it. But once Osiris is made whole, Isis conceives his son and rightful heir, Horus. Now, one ambiguous spell in the coffin texts may indicate that Isis is impregnated by a flash of lightning, while in other sources Isis is still in bird form, fans breath and life into Osiris's body with her wings, and then copulates with him. But the raising of Osiris was depicted for centuries, until Abydos was buried in the desert and not uncovered until Dorothy Eddy, also known as Seti, located it from dreams she had. She believed she was a priestess at the temple and was slain in those days. She believed she was reincarnated in England and traveled to Egypt in her old age to help find the ancient city. Hani El-Zani, who I met in Egypt, went to his apartment, went through some of his texts, spent some time with him, was commissioned by Egypt to find it and uncover it, but would not have known where it was except for her memory of having lived there as a young girl. These two buildings formed one center of power. It was only a small town at the time of Jesus' youth. It was once a necropolis for Egypt's earliest kings, and later became a pilgrimage center for the worship of the god Osiris. It is also where the cults of the defiled kings of ancient Egypt were celebrated. deified kings of Egypt. Now, the Temple of Seti, the first, has an unusual L-shaped ground plan. It's kind of just because of the Osirian that's underneath it. Okay, it's kind of built on top of it, and there's a spring there that keeps it flooded with water all the time. It was built primarily of limestone, but the Osirian was built, of course, of granite, huge granite, and keystone locked together in a technology that belies its 10,000-year-old age. The temple was completed after Seti I's death by his son Ramses II, whose cartouches are found in certain parts of the temple, along with his characteristic sunk relief style that is different from the very fine raised relief of his father. And believe me, the detail is quite stunning. The colors are really bring it out. Each year, the Passion of Osiris was celebrated with various parades and reenactments that the locals participated in. As a young child, Jesus would have seen this play many times. He knew the story of the resurrection of Osiris. All the priests of Herod knew this story. Now, Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea. This happened while Herod was king of Judea. After Jesus' birth, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem. They asked, "Where is the child who has been born to the King of the Jews? To be King of the Jews. We saw his star when it rose. Now we have come to worship him." But when King Herod heard about this, he was not pleased. He was very upset. Everyone in Jerusalem was troubled as well. So Herod called together all the chief priests of the people. He also called the teachers of the law. And he asked them, where the Messiah was going to be born. "In Bethlehem, in Judea," they replied. "That is what the prophet has written," he said. "But you, Bethlehem, and the land of Judah are certainly not the least important among the towns of Judah. A ruler will come out of you. He will rule my people Israel like a shepherd." It's in the book of Micah. But then Herod secretly called for the wise men. He found them. He found out from them exactly when the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem. He said, "Go and search carefully for the child. As soon as you find him, report it to me, and then I can go and worship him too." After the wise men had listened to the king, they went their way. The star they had seen when it rose went ahead of them. It finally stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were filled with joy. The wise men went to the house. There they saw the child with his mother Mary. They bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures. They gave him gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But God warned them in a dream not to go back to Herod, so they returned to their country on a different road. Now, when the wise men had left, Joseph had a dream. And in the dream, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph. "Get up," the angel said. "Take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there till I tell you to come back. Herod is going to search for the child. He wants to kill him." So Joseph got up during the night. He left for Egypt with the child and his mother Mary. They stayed there until King Herod died. So the words of the Lord had been spoken through the prophet came true. He had said, "I brought my son out of Egypt." It's in the book of Hosea. Now Herod realized that the wise men had tricked him. So he became very angry. He gave orders about Bethlehem and the area around. He ordered all the boys 2 years old and under to be killed. And this agreed with the time when the wise men had seen the star. In this way, the words that Jeremiah the prophet spoke came true. He had said, "A voice is heard in Ramah. It is the sound of crying and deep sadness. Rachel is crying over her children. She refuses to be comforted because they are gone." And that's in the book Jeremiah. These are Old Testament writings. So after Herod died a horrible and painful death from a strange illness, Joseph had a dream while he was still in Egypt when Jesus was about 10 years old. Joseph had another dream wherein an angel of the Lord appeared to him. The angel said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, go to the land of Israel. The people who are trying to kill the child are dead." So Joseph got up. He took the child and his mother, Mary, back to the land of Israel. But then he heard that Archelaus, the king of Judea, Archelaus was ruling in the place of his father Herod. This made Joseph afraid to go there. Joseph had, after all, already been warned in a dream. So he went back to the land of Galilee instead. There he lived in a town called Nazareth. So what the prophets had said about Jesus came true. They had said that he would be called a Nazarene. Nazareth was a very small town near the sea. Joseph was a carpenter, and with his tools and skills could always be a valuable asset to any town where he lived. Now, by the time Jesus was 12, Joseph and Mary had made several trips back to Jerusalem on caravans for the Passovers. This was the only way to travel in the desert. Robbers and nomads, they preyed upon stragglers along this way, so caravans were the only way to carry security, food, and enough people to ward off any such attacks. You will recall the time when the caravan had left Jerusalem. And before long, Mary discovered that Jesus was not with them. It had been nearly a decade since they fled Bethlehem, and perhaps the role her son would play in the world was far from her mind. In Luke chapter 2, we read this. Now his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem after the custom of the feast. When they had fulfilled the days and they returned, the child Jesus tarried behind in Jerusalem, and Joseph and his mother knew not of it. But they, supposing him to have been in the company, went a day's journey, and they sought him among their kinsfolk and acquaintance. And when they found him not, they turned back again to Jerusalem, seeking him. But that's not easy to do in those days. You don't just leave the caravan and go back and follow the camel tracks, back. You can't go by yourself. They had to wait until they passed another caravan going back in the other direction. So they jumped from one caravan to the other caravan, leaving their family and their friends and acquaintances, and they headed back to Jerusalem. And it came to pass after 3 days. You can imagine what a Jewish mother feels like after 3 days of losing a 12-year-old in a big city full of pilgrims. They found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the doctors, both hearing them and asking them questions, and all that heard him were astonished at his understanding and his answers. And when they saw him, they were amazed. That's hardly the word I would use. And his mother said unto him, Son, why hast thou dealt with us? Behold, thy father and I have sought thee sorrowing. And he said unto them, How is it that ye sought me? Wist ye not that I must be about my Father's business? Boom. This must have brought eternity slamming back into her heart. The complacency was over. She remembered what was said about the sorrow piercing her heart. This was only the beginning. Now, some scholars believe that Jesus' father Joseph died when he was about 12, and that this traumatic event could have been the catalyst for him, still as a young boy, to begin a personal quest to attain spiritual enlightenment. Some researchers believe that he spent these undocumented years visiting Britain with one Joseph of Arimathea, while others believe he traveled to India, Persia, which is Iran today. In the late 19th century, a Russian traveler claimed to have discovered genuine texts in a monastery in India that proved that Jesus traveled and taught there and elsewhere in the East. And Jesus may have traveled to Britain with Joseph of Arimathea, a tin trader, who some believe was his uncle, although other canonical gospel texts describe him mainly as a rich man and disciple of Jesus. A great degree of literature has been written about this particular tale, taking it to the realms of tradition, so that by the 15th century, Glastonbury, which is in Somerset, was touted as the birthplace of British Christianity. Joseph was believed to have erected his first church there to house the Holy Grail. My ancestors were the guardians of the Grail and possibly the Ark in Ross Lynn as the hereditary sheriffs of Galloway. There is a spring in Stranraer, Scotland, that bears Joseph's name, and my family name is all over that town. There was also an account that Joseph of Arimathea had earlier visited Glastonbury with Jesus as a child, which inspired the artist and poet William Blake to compose a poem that became the words to the English hymn, Jerusalem. And did those feet in ancient time walk upon England's mountains green? And was the Lamb of God on England's pleasant pastures seen? I can hear the music. Upon returning at age 30, the first place Jesus is noticed was the River Jordan visiting his cousin, John the Baptist. Be right back after this break. Don't go away.
To get the most from this series, let me give you just a quick list. Here's number one, be thankful. I think, first of all, to get more, we need to just be thankful for what we already have, especially living in this unbelievable country. But here we are, right? Probably doing well. But let's be thankful for where we are, because that's how good ideas start to flow. Thanksgiving for what you've already got. Here's what blocks the flow of all good information: cynicism. It's not that difficult to be a practiced cynic. Feeling cynical about circumstances, cynical about place, cynical about opportunities, cynical about people. But if we turn that around, turn cynicism into thanksgiving, now the ideas can flow, information can flow, refinement of ideas can flow. So that's number one, be thankful.
The reviews for Extendivite are amazing. Here are some from Amazon. September 2018. Extendivite works in keeping my blood pressure in the normal range. I've been using Extendivite for many years now. May 2018. Great product. I use regularly and I rarely get sick. March 2018. This product has relieved what appeared to be angina pain in my chest and shortness of breath after climbing stairs. I'm quite happy about it. February 2018. My husband, son, and I have been using this product for a few months now, and we have noticed an improvement in our joints and blood pressure. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. To order, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
Travis Cook, America's Evil Genius, here to invite you to join us every Tuesday afternoon here on Truth Frequency Radio. No, on our show you will not see a bunch of three-piece suits or a cocktail party, and you certainly won't see a bunch of inside the Beltway banter. But you will see eye-gouging, crotch-kicking, no-holds-barred political discussion, the likes of which you won't see anywhere else in media. America's Evil Genius. We come to you every Tuesday from the outskirts of war-torn St. Louis, Missouri, where there's always a good race rider sex scandal just around the corner. Join us every Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central, and noon on the left coast right here on TFRLive.com. America's Evil Genius, Travis Cook on TruthFrequencyRadio.com.
You are now tuned into the Truth Frequency.
Your protection from deception. TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind words in the chat room. Thank you very much. So Jesus returns to the River Jordan, and in Matthew chapter 3, I'm going to pick it up in verse 13. So then cometh Jesus from Galilee to Jordan unto John to be baptized of him. But John forbade him, saying, I have need to be baptized of thee, and comest thou to me? And Jesus answered and said unto him, Suffer to be so for now. For thus it becometh us to fulfill all righteousness. Then he suffered him. And Jesus, when he was baptized, went up straightway out of the water, and lo, the heavens were opened unto him, and he saw the Spirit of God descending like a dove, and lighting upon him. And lo, a voice from heaven saying, This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Now there were witnesses to this, and some of them were Zoroastrians. Zoroastrians were, I guess, pre-Christians. They already had a prophecy of something like this. And it's interesting, too, that the voice sounded as kind of like the wind blowing or rushing waters, some people said, and some people did hear a voice. It's what we call being in tune with the Spirit. When you're in tune with it, you can hear the words. If you're not in tune with it or hearing it in a foreign language, then it sounds like something completely different, unintelligible but audible. And the other thing is that this is very important in verse 15, where it says, Suffer to be so now, for thus it becometh us to fulfill all righteousness. And I'm going to explain that to you in a little bit, because it comes out of Hebrews, the book of Hebrews, and I'm going to explain that to you. So now let's jump to Mark chapter 1. So then was Jesus led up of the Spirit into the wilderness after he was baptized, to be tempted of the devil. And when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, he was afterward an hungered. And when the tempter came to him, he said, If thou be the Son of God, Command that these stones be made into bread. But he answered and said, It is written, Man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God. Then the devil taketh him up to the holy city, and setteth him up on a pinnacle of the temple. And he said unto him, If thou be the Son of God, cast thyself down. For it is written, He shall give his angels charge concerning thee, and in their hands they shall bear thee up, lest at any time thou shalt dash thy foot against a stone. I wonder where it was written. I have not read that in any ancient scripture. It must have been written somewhere else. But Jesus said unto him, It is written, Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. And again the devil taketh him up to an exceedingly high mountain, and showeth him all the kingdoms of the world, and the glory of them, and saith unto him, All these things will I give thee, if thou wilt fall down and worship me. I wonder what world leaders these days would fall down and worship Satan to be given rulership over all the kingdoms of the world. I think we see many. I wonder how many people would lay down and worship Satan if they were given a golden voice to sing and make billions, or to show their face and be worshipped for their face. I think we know a few. Get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, Thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve. Then the devil leaveth him, and behold, angels came and ministered unto him. So, how did that happen? What actually happened? Who came to minister unto him? Let's jump to Hebrews chapter 5. Fill in some of the details here. For every high priest taken from among men is ordained for men in things pertaining to God, that he may offer both gifts and sacrifices for sins. Who can have compassion on the ignorant and on them that are out of the way, for that he himself also is compassed with infirmity? And by reason hereof he ought, as for the people, so also for himself, to offer for sins. And no man taketh this honor unto himself, but he that is called of God, as was Aaron. Well, I think back, how was Aaron called exactly? Oh, that's right. Aaron was called by the laying on of hands by Moses, right? That's how Aaron was called. So this is the way all men who are called to the priesthood are called. So also, as it says in verse 5, Christ glorified not himself to be made an high priest, but he that said unto him, Thou art my son, today I have begotten thee. Sounds like his father. As he saith also in another place, Thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. Kind of a type and a shadow, kind of another person. And this person, named Melchizedek, but it's after the order of Melchizedek, but it has another name, this priesthood, this special handing on of authority by the laying on of hands through one who already has it. Maybe it had a name, something like the priesthood after the holy order of God, but they don't like to say the word God, not in the Old Testament. It's kind of blasphemous. So they go, that priesthood that Melchizedek held. Melchizedek was really a good example of the priesthood. So over the centuries, it just became known as the priesthood after the order of Melchizedek. Interesting. And then it goes on to explain, who in the days of his flesh, when he had offered up prayers and supplications with strong crying and tears unto him that was able to save him from death, and was heard, in that he feared, though he were a son, capital S, yet learned he obedience by the things which he suffered, and being made perfect, he became the author of eternal salvation unto all them that obey him, called of God and high priest after the order of Melchizedek, of whom we have many things to say, and hard to be uttered, seeing ye are dull of hearing. For when the time ye ought to be teachers, ye have need that one teach you again, which be the first principles of the oracles of God, and are become as such as have a need of milk and not strong meat. You didn't listen. You paid attention to other things. You were dilly-dallying. You were daydreaming. You didn't understand what we were trying to teach you. And now this is a deep subject that I'm trying to share with you, Earth Explorers. This is strong meat. For everyone that uses milk is unskillful in the word of righteousness, for he is a baby. But strong meat belongeth to them that are full of age, even those who by reason of use have their senses exercised to discern both good and evil. You know what's right and wrong. But you're not seasoned in the scriptures. You haven't sat, pondered, prayed, learned, compared, reflected, grown in this righteousness. To whom also, by the way, this Melchizedek was so great, he was such a great priesthood holder. Abraham gave a 10th part of all. Abraham paid his tithing to Melchizedek. First being, by interpretation, king of righteousness. And after that, also, he was the king of Salem, king of peace. By the way, king of Salem in those days grew to be king of Jerusalem. Melchizedek was a mighty man and a priest, and he had other characteristics about him. Go way back into the writings before the ark. You begin to learn mighty things about Melchizedek. Now, consider how great this man was, unto whom even the patriarch Abraham gave his tithing, gave a 10th of his spoils. And verily they are the sons of Levi. You know, the Levites. They have a genetic line of the priesthood. They receive the office of the priesthood to their bloodline. Only Levites. And have a commandment to take tithes of the people according to the law, that is, of their brethren. So they come out of the loins of Abraham. But he whose descent is not counted from them, they're not Levites, they received the tithes of Abraham and blessed him that had the promises. And without all contradiction, the less is the blessed of the better. So that's giving a description of who and what Melchizedek was. But this is the most powerful of the descriptions of Melchizedek. For it is evident that our Lord sprang out of Judah, of which tribe Moses spake absolutely nothing concerning the priesthood. The Levites were not Judah, who is made not after the law of a carnal commandment, but after the power of an endless life. For he testifieth, thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. Now, the reason I share those things, because they're key to understanding where this authority came from, how it was passed on, as through the laying on of hands. So while Jesus was in the desert being tempted and Lucifer left, and then he was administered to by angels, one of the pair of hands that came to him at that moment, I believe, were the hands of Melchizedek himself. Yes. The power of an endless life. Melchizedek never died. Just like Moses. Never died. He was brought back specifically for this task at this time to pass that priesthood on to Jesus. Now, there were far too many pilgrims for the temple priest to feed the lamb on one evening. Jesus had returned and had his 3-year ministry. That's another story we can go into, but I'm specifically talking about the end of his ministry, which we celebrate this week, this Holy Week. Last Sunday was Palm Sunday, and today is Easter Sunday. So they divide the feast over 2 nights. The elite, of course, partake on the second night, but the sacramental feast actually may have been what's known as a seder, or a more relaxed Passover supper where hymns are sung and unleavened bread is eaten along with the lamb. This holiday is linked to Passover, not just in its position on the calendar, but also in much of its symbolism. The Bible tells of the Passover meal during which Jesus Christ prepared his disciples for his death. Before the actual sacrament, however, Judas leaves to betray him. He eats part of the supper, but you see, Jesus had not broken the bread, had not administered the wine, had not said, "This is my flesh, this is my blood." Judas had already left. Matthew chapter 26, verse 26. Now as they were eating, Jesus took bread, and after blessing it, broke it, gave it to the disciples, and said, "Take ye, eat, this is my body." And he took a cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink of it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I will not drink again of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." And when they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. Let's continue in Matthew 26. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane. And he said to them, "Sit here, while I go there and pray." Took Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me." And then going a little further into the garden, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will." Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. "Couldn't you men keep watch with me for 1 hour?" He asked Peter. "Watch and pray, so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak." He went away a second time and prayed, "My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away unless I drink it, may your will be done." When he came back, he again found them sleeping, because their eyes were heavy. So he left them and went away once more and prayed the 3rd time, saying the same thing. And then he returned to the disciples and said to them, "Are you sleeping and resting? Look, the hour has come, and the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, Let us go. Here comes my betrayer. And we'll jump over to John, chapter 18, verse 12. Then the band and the captain and officers of the Jews took Jesus and bound him and led him away to Annas first, for he was father-in-law to Caiaphas, which was the high priest that same year. And now Caiaphas was he which gave counsel to the Jews that it was expedient that one man should die for the people. And we'll jump to chapter 19. And then led they Jesus from Caiaphas into the hall of judgment. And it was early, and they themselves went not into the judgment hall, lest they should be defiled, but that they might eat the Passover. This is still the first night of the Passover for them. Now Friday was the second night of the Passover. Remember, the sins of the world are being settled upon Jesus. He is brought before Pilate to be judged. While Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane and praying in the garden, the sins of the world begin to be settled upon him. The pain is great, so much so that an angel comes and tries to comfort him, but cannot. Some say that drops of blood came through the pores of his skin. The pain was so great. Difficult to think about, difficult to have a concept of that much pain. Now, Pilate's wife had a dream where she became convinced Jesus was a good man and that Pilate should not harm him. Wives sometimes prevail upon rulers, but Pilate's course was set by very dark powers he could not control. He tried to avoid the path by calling upon a custom to pardon a prisoner before Passover. So he called for Barabbas to be released, or Jesus. He figured that this violent murderer was a good contrast to Jesus, and that he would please his wife by sparing Jesus. But the Pharisees were dressed in formal attire, and they were scattered throughout the crowd. They were kind of like our mainstream media today, receiving their talking points at 4 o'clock in the morning. And then the sun comes up and the cameras turn on and the lights turn on and the makeup is perfect. And they read the words. And the sheep do repeat the words. They shouted for Barabbas to be freed. And the weak sheep of people joined in. We see that behavior every day, don't we? Now let's jump back to Matthew chapter 27. The governor answered and said unto them, Whether of the twain will ye that I release unto you? They said, Barabbas. Pilate saith unto them, What shall I do then with Jesus, which is called Christ? They all say unto him, Let him be crucified. And the governor said, Why? What evil hath he done? But they cried out the more, saying, Let him be crucified. So Pilate washes his hands. It's a symbolic gesture, washing your hands in a bowl of water. He saw that he could not prevail against them, but that rather a tumult was made. It was like a crowd of Antifa, like a crowd of Black Lives Matter saying, Fry 'em like bacon. He couldn't get through. They were yelling and they were screaming and they were chanting, and the priests were there looking authoritative and with the people. And he washed his hands before the multitude, saying, I am innocent of the blood of this just person. See ye to it. And then answered all the people and said, His blood be on us and on our children. Gee, I just heard this Undersecretary or Assistant Secretary of State yesterday when the Russians said to them, if you keep feeding weapons to these people, all you're doing is assuring their death. We're trying to bring peace to this country, and what you're doing is assuring that this war will go on and that more innocents will die. And what did the Undersecretary, the Assistant Secretary of Defense say? Guilty as charged. It's the same thing. It's the same people doing it again today. Then released he Barabbas unto them, and when they had scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified. Now let's talk a little bit about a scourging. I think you saw the movie The Passion of the Christ with Jim Caviezel. He tells the story. I heard him tell it in person about filming that scene and how the person that was flailing the whip, they have camera angles that they can use, but one of the thongs, and by the way, in a scourge, it's not just a leather whip with, several strands to it. In the strands, they knot pieces of metal and bone so that when the scourge strikes you, it just lays open the flesh and the back bleeds profusely. One of the thongs got just a little too close and touched Jim's back as it went across. He said the pain was absolutely excruciating. It came across on the film, and they left it in. Some of the costume blood wasn't costume blood. It was a very powerful scene, very powerful story. Now, Jesus had been kept up all night in an illegal trial, beaten, insulted. We see illegal political trials to this very day in our own capital. The same people doing the same thing, trying the innocent and torturing them. He was carrying some of the sins of the world while he was undergoing this. He had been scourged, which a mortal man could not have survived. Normally, you died from it, from shock. He collapsed carrying the cross they settled on him to carry. So Simon, a pilgrim, who did not know the laws that no man could line the streets leading to Golgotha, was given the task of carrying the cross for him. Don't go away. The story gets better. We'll be right back after this.
Hi, my name is Ella, and I'm 10 years old. I'm one of the millions of children born to parents suffering from the sheeple virus. Symptoms include the inability to think for oneself, the attention span of a goldfish, and a strong belief in government and the mainstream media. It is estimated that 1 out of every 2 children are being raised by parents infected with the sheeple virus. But there is a cure. For as little as 19 cents per day, you can become a TFR supporter and help children like me get their daily dose of truth. Together, we will make sure every child has protection from deception.
I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state. I only need 11,000 votes. Fellas, I need 11,000 votes. Give me a break. Let me handle it. Don't say that, you stupid son of a bitch. Let me handle it. I was going to show them how good I am. Let me handle it. Let me handle it. This is easy. Let me handle it. And I made the mistake. Why would you give was so simple, and then I did it, and look what happened. Now we gotta make it great again. Our country's embarrassed. The whole world is laughing at us. But is there any place better to be than a Trump rally? Crooked Hillary Clinton and the Democrats. How would you like to have her as your wife? What kind of a sick, perverted mind does that? Bill Clinton, he's living in fear. Other than that, how are things going? Global pandemic in the middle of the pandemic. Where's your mask? Where's your mask? You have to remember, where's your mask? Where's your mask? Where's your mask? Where's your mask? You have to remember, you're not supposed to get set up. Let me handle it. Don't say that, you stupid son of a bitch. Let me handle it. I was gonna show them how good I am. Let me handle it. Let me handle it. This is easy. Let me handle it. And I made the mistake. The person who's very low key, the press does not treat fairly. She's really tough and she's really, really smart. Marjorie Taylor Greene.
You see, this is a simple meme that you would find on the internet, but this meme is real. The Green New Deal surprise, it serves China and China only. You know, really what all this is going to do is help this man out the most. President Xi of China. It's sad. Really, 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 really sad. China. It's sad. Really, 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 really sad.
Let me handle it. Don't say that, you stupid son of a bitch. Let me handle it. I was gonna show them how good I am. Let me handle it. Let me handle it. This is easy. Let me handle it. And I made the mistake.
Wherever you are, make it T. Truth Frequency Radio.
Skeeter Burke on Foxhole brought up a good observation. Wanted to know how big the crowd was. Maybe Pilate was not able to sway public opinion. And you have to understand there was no sound reinforcement in those days, so even a murmur around the crowd is difficult to be heard by. But I would say, based upon historical records, that during the Passover that year in Jerusalem, there was probably close to 1 million pilgrims from all over the world. It was packed. It was packed. People were emotional, and people would do whatever the high priest told them to do. They didn't want to get crossways with the priesthood because, you know, their salvation kind of depended upon it. It was like going against, a congressman or something. So Simon carries the cross to the top of the hill. And when they arrive at the top of the hill, he laid the cross down on the ground, already stained by so many who had been crucified on that very place. They laid Jesus on that cross and drove a nail through his feet to hold him in place. Then the Roman crucifiers, who were very skilled at what they did, they had lots of people hanging on crosses that day and had many days before that. They knew exactly what they were doing. They stretched his arms on that cross, and they drove nails through the palms of his hands. And then, fearing that his large stature might allow his weight to pull the heads of the nails straight through the palms of his hands, they put the nail in the sure place. For that, I have to go back to Isaiah chapter 22. And I will clothe him with thy robe, and strengthen him with thy girdle, and I will commit thy government into his hand, and he shall be a father to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and to the house of Judah And the key of the house of David will I lay upon his shoulder. So he shall open, and none shall shut. And he shall shut, and none shall open. And I will fasten him as a nail in a sure place. And he shall be for a glorious throne to his father's house. The nail in the sure place is right here, in the middle of all those bones that make your wrists so flexible. Also what passes through there is a nerve, almost the size of your little finger. It travels down the arm and goes over the elbow right here. Have you ever hit it right there, the funny bone? Nothing funny about it. These Romans knew exactly where that nerve was in this wrist, and they drove that nail straight through it. Couldn't tear it out. It was driven right through the ligaments of the wrist and right through that nerve. Now, one of the ways that you die on the cross is you suffocate. And one of the ways to prolong your life is to raise up on the cross, to pull your weight up and push with your feet and try to get a deep breath. But you cannot, because the pain is so excruciating with that nail straight through that nerve. Still, the sins of the world being settled upon him. The pain that you and I placed on him, there now. The pain that generations from now will commit were placed upon him. But his thoughts were for the innocents who were following his orders, who were just following orders. The first thing he said from the cross, he looked down at the Roman guards and said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And then, noticing that there are others hanging up there with him, 2 thieves also being crucified. One sort of criticized him, said, if thou be the Christ, basically, get us down off these crosses and let us go. Questioned him. But the other one said, basically, you're a fool. You don't know who this man is. He's the Son of God. And what did Jesus say to them? Amen, I say to you. Today you will be with me in paradise. And then he looked down again, and at his feet, his mother and John the Beloved. And the next thing he said was so important. Woman, behold your son. Son, behold your mother. This is a way of Jesus saying, please take care of my mom. This is where his thoughts were. But then you realize that the Father cannot be where there is sin. Can't tolerate it. Can't be in the same space. Too much light. Gotta either have the light or the darkness. And so for the first time in Jesus' life that he can remember, from the time he was born, first time, he is not in communication with his Father, because the Father leaves, perhaps to go to a distant corner of the universe and weep. But Jesus felt it instantly, felt that emptiness, felt that I don't feel him here right now. And what did he say? My God, why have you forsaken me? Why hast thou forsaken me? He felt the disconnection. But then the rest of the sins of the world piled upon him. And while he was hanging there, holding the sins of all mankind upon him, at the bottom of the hill in Jerusalem, the priests were slaying 250,000 lambs to be fed to pilgrims all over that city in little dinners everywhere, while the real lamb was on the cross. They were believing it was the representative lambs that they were slaying at the temple and preparing for all these little meals. They didn't make the connection, but you do. And then he said, I thirst. But now they don't give them water. What they have is a sponge, and the sponge is soaked in kind of a vinegar drink that's laced with something like fentanyl. It's a painkiller. And what it does, it keeps the pain from stimulating you to avoid to stimulating you to breathe, to move against the pain. It dulls the senses and causes you to die quicker. But Jesus did not want to be drugged. He needed to finish this, so he refused that drink on his lips. And then he said, I've got it. I've got it. I'm holding it. I'm alive. It's all with me. It's finished. It is finished. What was finished? The sacrifice, the atonement. Everything that we would do, everything we would ever think of, dream of, or do, he took with him. And then he said with a loud voice, Father, into thy hands I commit my spirit. And he took the sins through the veil with him. And a loud clap of thunder, and the earth cracked. And the entire universe witnessed it. Because this was the one born, would live his life and take the sacrifice for everyone in the universe. It's a powerful thing. That's what made Jesus the Christ. That is the author and finisher of our faith. That is what we celebrated today. Because that's just the crucifixion. Into the tomb he goes on Friday before he has to die before the 9th hour, which is the beginning of the Sabbath, because you can't defile the Sabbath by having anybody actually die on the Sabbath. So everybody up there, has to die. They come along with what's called a cudgel. A cudgel is like a long sledgehammer. And what they do is they go along right before the 9th hour, right before 6 o'clock, before the Sabbath actually begins, and they break the femur bones of the ones who are alive on the cross. They cannot push up and get another breath, and they suffocate and die in just a couple of minutes. But they got to Jesus, they stabbed him in the side and verified that he was in fact dead. He didn't flinch. So they didn't break his bones. Also fulfilling a prophecy. But this is how good they were at crucifixion. There was no heart. There was no mercy. And lying in the tomb on Friday, and then all day Saturday, and then on the third day, at a very early hour, before, right as the sun was showing itself, as the sky began to lighten, the first one there to the tomb was Mary Magdalene. But when she arrived, the stone was rolled away, the tomb was empty, and she was heartbroken. I mean, more than heartbroken. They realized that she realized his body was gone, and she thought somebody had gone away with it. Somebody had stolen it. Because obviously it would take a powerful group of men to get that large stone out of the way. And so, looking around, there was only one man nearby, and she was crying. And what did he say? What did this man say to her? Woman, why weepest thou? And I can't tell you the whole thing that she said because I wasn't there, but I can imagine. I can't believe it. I came down here. It's early enough. Why is a stone rolled away? He's not there. Somebody has taken him. Can you please tell me? And then in this, Jewish woman who loved this man so much, in this frantic state, he says one thing in a way only he can say it, and a way only she knew, she could recognize, because they were close, very close. She loved him and he loved her so much. He said, "Mary." And then she recognized him. She didn't see him for who he was because his countenance had changed. He didn't look the same, but she knew his voice. She knew that way of saying her name. And what did she do? She went to embrace him, like she always did. But he held her back. "Touch me not, for I have not risen to my Father which is in heaven. You go tell the others that I'm back, and I will see you." Now, a lot of people pass over this. They don't pay much attention to this. But I thought about this. I meditated about this. I thought, what if I was just sitting on a rock nearby, and they didn't really notice I was there? What would I see? What I really witnessed was that Jesus loved Mary so much, he came to her first. He didn't even go to his own father. He risked not being able to finish the mission to see her first. That's love. After his mission is complete, he's released from it by his father. He comes back, stays about 6 weeks with them, and teaches them even more. And then he visits all the peoples of the earth. They all have records of it. Indians, Mayans, Toltecs, every people on the face of the earth have a savior story about this time in their history. Some being of light that comes to them and declares to them that he's the Son of God and that he will return. Now would be a good time, but I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow or very soon. We're in a terrible situation where the same people that conducted this mob justice of Jesus, they're still here. They're still here, and they're still doing it. And they're still wanting to take wealth from the world in exchange for power and to the damnation of all mankind. They don't care. Or they believe in darkness totally, and this is what they're following. So that is my Easter story in its completion. That's the making of the Christ and the love of Jesus for Mary. And I appreciate you very much staying with me through it. So let's break away a little bit here and let's talk about what's going on in the world, because I believe I have the evidence to prove that we are in the most dangerous 7 months of the entire existence of the United States of America. Since it was founded, since the war was fought in 1786 and the convention in 1787, in all that time, it has not been more dangerous than it is right now. Because even in those days, even though maybe we would have lost the Republic, we probably could have fought it back. The weapons were not that terrible. They were cannonballs and bullets, but now the weapons are too terrible. Now the costs are too high. Now you have the entire race of mankind on the table. And you have men and women who don't care if half the world dies in a nuclear winter over the next 35 years of nuclear poisoning. They don't care. as long as they don't lose the presidency. It's sad to see. It's sad to see murderous war criminals like Victoria Nuland traveling the world trying to gain a coalition for her suicidal mission to destroy Russia, which can never happen. You're not going to destroy Russia. Russia will be here for the next 1,000 years. We may not, but Russia will. China will. This is prophesied. And I can tell you, when you have an arrogant leadership openly saying, take your best shot, Putin, whatever. You just take your best shot. We're going to keep this war going. We're going to keep this terrible mass murder of innocent people. We're going to keep it going because we have 7 months to go to this election, and we're pulling out all the stops. If we can't do cheat by mail, if we can't lock this whole world down again with masks and social distancing, and you can't leave your home, then we will burn it down, because we're not going to lose. If we can't have it, nobody can have it. This is what you're hearing them say. This is what you hear Jen Psaki say. This is what you hear Victoria Nuland say. This is what you hear Jake Sullivan say. These are the only people on the planet saying these words. And you have men saying, stop it. Please stop sending these weapons. Stop coming at us. If you force us, we will fight back. They've been saying it for 8 years. Maybe Obama likes to draw with red crayons on the sidewalk, but it's meaningless to the world. But when Vladimir Putin paints a red line on the ground and you cross it, you will die. That's what he told the Pan-European Army. That's what he told the Global Syndicate. That's what he told the leaders in Brussels. Stop trying to put your weapons and your mercenaries in Ukraine. You think these mercenaries that surrendered over the last few days in Avastal, do you think they just got there? Do you think they just showed up last weekend for the glory of fighting against Russia? They've been there for 8 years. For 8 years, these mercenaries have gone there, and they've been killing Russian-speaking Ukrainians. They had enough. They had amassed a force, an invasion force, getting ready to invade Crimea, and they were going to slaughter hundreds of thousands of people. Do you think Putin was going to wait until they crossed the border of Crimea and go into Crimea and fight this battle in neighborhoods, in Russian neighborhoods in Crimea? No. He stopped them in Donbass. He joined the DPR, that's the Donbass People's Republic. He joined the Donbass Defenders, and he went in and stopped it. And by the way, another brilliant strategy, I just couldn't believe it. There's a guy out there, I'm not even going to say his name, I can't. He comes on TikTok with a purple t-shirt on. He's an old guy. Comes on with a purple t-shirt all the time, talking about facts this and facts that, and everything he says is propaganda. Yesterday, he came on and said, well, it's a good thing that the Russians are not very good at protecting their communications because we picked up a phone conversation. Yes, we picked up a phone conversation, and it was a Russian general, and he was in Donbass, and he had received reinforcements, and he picked up the phone and he called back to Russia, and he was complaining that you sent me old men and drunks. Who are these people? They're not ready to fight. Yeah. That's what he said. That's what he said. And he stated it as fact. And I laughed. I said, wow, that's really brilliant. I mean, that's almost rivals a 40-kilometer convoy of old vehicles lined up headed for Kiev, and it was stalled somehow, not going anywhere. The whole world was looking at it, and we sat back and went, wow, that's really brilliant. You got the whole world to look at this convoy while the reinforcements pulled back into Kiev, and then Russia went in and destroyed all the roads and bridges and railroads. No reinforcements. It was absolutely brilliant. So now they pick up the phone, a la Sean Connery, Hunt for Red October, and he makes a phone call back to Russia, knowing that it's going to be picked up by this man in purple, knowing that he's going to go straight on TikTok, straight on social media, and say, oh, we're winning now because the Russians just got reinforced with a bunch of drunks and old men. Let's attack. Completely the art of war. Always represent to your enemies that you are weak when you are strong. He fell for it. He fell for it. His facts undid him. And today, well, actually last night, 811 targets were struck with absolute precision. No collateral damage at all. And today, the Azov-style steel mill is being pounded with big weapons. Weapons big enough to collapse those tunnels. They're burying those troops that would not come out and surrender alive under there. And I think they're going to flood it with water and kill the rest. So by week's end, Donbass will be secured. And still, Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals are pumping weapons into that region. By the way, there was a plane load of weapons and ammunition headed into that area, and the Russians shot it down before it had a chance to land. Nothing it's silly. And when Russia comes out and says, look, stop sending weapons into this area, because if you don't stop sending weapons into this area, you're going to make yourselves into a target. Now, I could take that to its logical end conclusion and say, you see that Pentagon? You see that 5-sided courtyard right in the middle of the Pentagon? That's where the bomb is going to land. If you make yourself a target, you better be prepared to be hit. Or, let me put it another way, you shouldn't be surprised that you're going to be hit. Quick break. We'll be right back after this.
Here's number 2 in the art of persuasion. Accurate facts. Accurate facts. We call it dealing in truth. Accuracy is very important. Here's why. It builds credibility. Credibility starts to weaken if you mess with the facts, the truth, the correct numbers. Now, everybody will give you room for what we call an unintentional error in dealing in facts. Now, see, if my watch says about 7:28, but if you were to ask me what time is it, and I was to say it's 7:30, you would allow me to be a couple of minutes off, right? If I said it was 7:30, but accurately, really, truthfully, it was 7:28, you would give me that error to just quickly say 7:30, right? You would say, you didn't mean to mess up my life, right? By leading me astray with this erroneous information that it was 7:30 when really it was only 7:28. Now, there are times and occasions when you may have to be precise, and it may be a life and death matter, who knows?
Hey everyone, it's Chris Gio, founder of Truth Frequency Radio and host of Beyond the Veil. The mainstream media and establishment are running scared right now, and they've prominently featured TruthFrequencyRadio.com as number 89 on the federal government's hit list, also known as the fake news list. which is essentially a list of sites slated for censorship on Facebook, YouTube, Google, and other social media. Now is the time for you to get involved. Share your favorite TFR shows far and wide on forums and social media. Tell your friends and family about your favorite shows. If you're a business owner, get in touch with us to feature your product or service right here on TFR. And if you haven't done so already, become a TFR supporter now and get unlimited commercial-free downloads in high quality. Visit truthfrequencyradio.com/sign-up. Thank you for making TFR the leader in independent and uncensored talk radio. Truth Frequency Radio, your protection from deception.
Real people, real radio.
Initiating the truth frequency.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
I've been waiting for this moment since my first breath in. Never would have thought I'd be afraid to begin, but here I am, the edge of the water, wondering if I can swim. Never seem to notice all the days pass through, but in this final moment I'm still chasing the truth. I want an explanation why I can't stay here forever in my youth. And if I press on, will you wait? Will you wait for me forever, or would it be wrong to ask you to come with? Tell me, will you wait?
Yes, we will wait. I promise. So thank you so much for all the comments. I've been replying back to the chat room during the break. I enjoy all the comments. That's a good one too. I like that, Ron. So let's talk a little bit about betrayal in the coup. Because you know what was done in 2020 was a coup. They tried from 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, and finally in 2020 they accomplished the coup by compromising the election in 6 states, exactly as I said would happen on Easter Sunday of 2020. I told you it was going to happen. I told you 6 states would do it. I even told you a couple of the states that it would be. By my statistical count, it would be 6 states that would be required to be turned in order for President Trump to be defeated. And it would happen through immense fraud, probably through cheat by mail, which was just shaping up in April of 2020. But then I also predicted that a couple of those states would probably not certify those elections, and that we would go into a 12th Amendment situation where Congress would have to elect the president, the Senate would have to elect the vice president, and that would end up being President Trump, and Biden would never take office, but that didn't happen. So what we see was a somewhat well-crafted plan of fraud. But then, you know, when it looked like it might not go through, it looked like Mike Pence had adjourned the joint session, had allowed Arizona to go back into a debate to decide whether or not they were going to certify the election or not. Everything was going as planned. But then a few minutes later, somebody ran into the room and said, "Run for your lives, we're under attack." Somebody scooped up the ballots, and off they went to the safe rooms. Of course, Pelosi had left about 10 minutes before that happened. And strangely enough, just about the time she left the podium, the Capitol Police opened the doors and let the tourists in. Well, it didn't take long before that devolved into a chaotic situation. So by the time everything was reconvened later in the afternoon, all that talk about debate and decertifying and all that was put aside, and they went right through, all 50 states certified, and that was the end of that. Well, John Durham's Friday motion, which happened just a couple of days ago, it really exceeded everyone's expectations, and I'm really surprised the news hasn't really picked this up. They haven't talked about it. But they were discussing CIA conclusions that Sussman was providing implausible data to federal authorities, providing CIA notes regarding their meeting with Sussman, and confirmation that they essentially spied on President-elect Trump. This is a very big thing because it's a very big crime. This is treason. It means people will be put to death. They won't be hung because now lynching is illegal, but they'll be put to a firing squad and killed. Now, the motion is a little lengthy. I'm going to leave a link in my newsletter. I may put this in a newsletter. I don't know. I might stick with just with the Making of the Christ story for this newsletter. But it was filed as part of the government's efforts to convince the court that the evidence it seeks to admit in Sussman's trial, and this is where this begins to really gain momentum, because the evidence that's admitted in the trial, which by the way is undergoing right now, is relevant and it is admissible. So here are the important parts. This is why Friday's motion was so powerful, and it's going to lead right to the liver of the global syndicate operating under the Clinton crime syndicate. Durham provided to the court 2 sets of notes, and they're related to Sussman's representation to the CIA. The first was from Sussman's January 31st, 2017 contacts with a CIA employee, where Sussman discussed wanting to provide to the CIA data on the presence and activity of unique Russian-made phones around President Trump. Now, it was said that this secret activity didn't start in 2017. It actually started in April of 2016. That's before the election. That's before Trump even became the candidate, the nominee. Trump was a candidate in April of 2016, but he was not the nominee. That didn't happen until May 26th. So this was going back a ways. This is very dangerous stuff. This makes Watergate, look like a Post-it note left out of place, okay? And by the way, this continued to well after the election and Trump's move to the White House. This continued. Now, Sussman alleged that the Russian phones, these Yoda phones, was also close to Trump, only around the president's movements, surfacing at his Trump Tower network in April of 2016 and being used through Wi-Fi at Trump's Grand Central West apartment. The phone even appeared with Trump in Michigan when he was interviewing a cabinet secretary. But that's interesting, because at a minimum, this confirms what has been reported for months, okay? That the Trump transition data was passed to the CIA. You have to ask yourself, Earth Explorers, what in the holy hell was the CIA doing infiltrating the Trump presidency? This is treason. This is treason. It is also more than that. The CIA provided was provided with data all the way back from April of 2016 when Trump was a private citizen. He wasn't even the nominee yet. I mean, he was as close to the presidency as Ted Cruz or John Kasich. They were all three still in the race at that time. Why does April 2016 matter? Ever think about that? It's because Russia was alleged to have hacked the Democrat Congressional Campaign Committee and the DNC networks in April of 2016. That's when it happened. That's when the alleged hack happened. You remember CrowdStrike and all that was contacted on April 30th, 2016 to respond to the suspected breach of the DNC. Remember all that? It was all fake. All fake. Remember the FBI was supposed to go in and check out the server, and they said, no, that's okay. We're going to hire CrowdStrike to do it. Yeah, and the January 31st, 2017, this is after the inauguration, January 17, 2017, conference was used to schedule the February 9th, 2017 meeting with the CIA. Remember that, where with the meeting where they all clapped and they were all there at Langley. And at that meeting, Sussman repeated his allegations that a Russian-made Yoda phone had been seen at Trump properties and had traveled with Trump to Michigan. He further alleged that in December of 2016, the Yoda phone was seen connecting to Wi-Fi from executive office of the president. In other words, the White House. But the Washington Post alleged to have fanned the flames on the Sussman Joffe spying operation. Remember, Joffe was a tech executive number one in the Sussman indictment, taking us to task for stating this correctly, that they spied on Trump. I hope the Washington Post is reading this because the CIA notes confirm what was reported and what was told to them via email. Remember, tech executive number one, right? So back to the Durham filing and the CIA's analysis of Sussman Joffe data. The CIA reviewed the Trump Yoda data and the Alpha Bank data in early 2017. And the fact that the CIA accepted this data on President Trump is treason. Okay, people have to go before a firing squad over this. This is the highest level of spying directly on a president of the United States ever that we've ever discovered. In any event, the CIA's findings are significant as they conclude that the data really wasn't technically plausible and it was never used, it was never created, and it was not machine tool generated. Okay, that's very, very important. Anyway, what a finding by the CIA, right? Of course, this only leads to more questions like, number one, who created the data? What user logged on and created the data if it wasn't Trump? And does it go back to the Joffe conspiracy, to tech executive number one in the indictment? And who else is part of that conspiracy? I guarantee they're not in it by themselves. These aren't, you don't get the CEO of the company involved in these things. It's an underling. It's somewhere tied into a spy network. And by the way, for the last question, consider this from the previous Durham filing, and I'll quote from it. Let's see. Law firm Schertler, Honorado, Mead, and Sears, in addition to their representation of the defendant, a separate lawyer of the firm is currently representing the 2016 Hillary for America presidential campaign, as well as multiple former employees of that campaign in matters before the special counsel. You see, it's a group, it's a gang. It is a gang, and they have it all. They know who they are. Now, as to those questions of a conspiracy, which is basically more than one person planning to commit a crime, that's a conspiracy. Durham's granting of immunity provide some insight. If we go back to April 5th, just remember this part. Researcher number 2. Remember researcher number 2? He's been identified now as David Dagan. He has been given immunity. Why would you do such a thing? Here's why. Because if you look up above me right here, there's the Art of War. You see that right there, that book? If you go to page 200 in that book, it starts talking about spies. Starts talking about spies. One of the most valuable spies are your enemy's spies that can be turned into spies for you. Yeah, they're the most effective spies. They're like double agents, okay? That's why. That's why. So Durham can uncover otherwise unavailable facts relating to the Alpha Bank project. Dagan, being granted immunity, it's certainly important, okay? He could be prosecuted, and he knows it. As Durham states that Rodney Joffe, who's the guy who heads up this massive tech company worth $1 billion, way at the top, he led the Alpha Bank hoax effort. He created it. He propagated it. He fabricated the information. He remains a suspect of the investigation. Joffe's a big fish, folks. He's a billionaire. Now, while Sussman and others argue that it's impossible to prosecute Joffe because of the 5-year statute of limitations, Durham disagrees because defense counsel is not and could not be aware of all the evidence that the government has collected and continues to collect, or the possible violations of law that it is investigating. In other words, if it's treason, there ain't no statute of limitations. Joffe could go down. And if he goes down, he's going to pull Hillary with him. Durham will also be granting immunity at trial for an individual who was employed at Fusion GPS. This is huge because Fusion GPS was the heart of the fabrication of the evidence that went to the FISA judges. When the FISA judges or judge got this information, they thought it was credible enough that they issued the warrant. And they were deceived. Now, I kind of am pissed off about this because if I was a judge and somebody presented false information in my court and got me to issue a warrant, and then they went out and spied on this person and got more information, and then I found out later that the information that they gave me to get the warrant was false, I would haul their asses back in my court, and I would demand, I don't care who you are, I want you to show cause why I don't put you in jail for committing fraud against this court. But that never happened. Those FISA judges never asked a single question. What did they do? Oh, they just resigned. They resigned. They moved on. They're still doing their judge job. Yeah. And by the way, it was initially suspected that Christopher Steele was steered in the right direction after some smart folks noted the person was employed at Fusion GPS. This person, by the way, it might be Laura Sego. This former Fusion GPS employee was likely to testify to limited information pertaining to Christopher Steele. As Durham puts it, this will include whether Sussman was acting on behalf of the Clinton campaign when he relayed the Alpha Bank allegations. That was part of the lie, by the way, that, well, I'm not presenting this on behalf of the Clinton campaign. I'm just a concerned citizen, and I want you to know what Trump was doing. But the fact was, he was doing it on behalf of the Clinton campaign. And that's why they got him. That's why they arrested him. That's why he's under trial. Now, I want to leave one more thing with you, and that is that if you ask the question why Sussman and Joffe were so damn desperate to provide the FBI and the CIA with this dirt linking Trump to Russia, Sussman himself provided false statements to federal officials. you got to know you're going to go to prison for it. They're going to find out. Of course, I guess they thought that Hillary might win, and so it would never be investigated. But it's becoming more and more likely that somebody potentially fabricated this evidence. Somebody made it up. And Sussman and Joffe are going to go to jail. And thus, this jeopardized their careers, their wealth, what they're able to hand on to their kids, their whole estates, everything they risked to tie Trump to Russia. Why? I mean, consider the risk, the personal cost to both men. It's huge. It's everything. You go from being rich, and your kids and your grandkids and their kids for generations being multimillionaires, having great power, great wealth, great comfort in their lives. You put all that at risk to lie for Hillary Clinton. When you get a fish that big and they're stuck and the shark is coming, what do you think the big fish will do to shake themselves off that harpoon? Anything, including turn in the Clintons. Yeah, that's why this is important. That's why this is important. It's all going to lead back to the DNC and Hillary Clinton. It's bad. It's really bad for them. Really bad. That's why it's a dangerous time. All right. Let's change gears a little bit and talk about money. Hang on a second. Let me just check and see how much time I got. Okay, I got enough. We talk about currency wars from time to time. We talked about the Japanese yen, about how they were going to start doing, fiat spending, and it started a currency war. And we talked about the attack on the ruble and how they artificially devalued the ruble and took it off the market and wouldn't let it trade. And, Russia was in really bad shape. Well, now the ruble's worth more money than it was before the sanctions. So I think, Russia's in pretty good shape. But that's only the surface. The currency war has just been escalated to a level that, I foresaw it in, I think it was chapter 4 of volume 1 of the Arc of Millions of Years series. I predicted that this would happen. This is way back in 2004 I made this. But I didn't actually expect it to get this big. I expected maybe they would try something in the U.S., with a digital dollar because of counterfeiting, because of not enough money in print, or because all the printed money was out of the country being used for drug deals. There are a lot of reasons to put a digital currency in place in the United States, a digital dollar. But I did not expect a Chinese digital currency. I didn't think about it back then, but it's true. It's known as the digital yuan. And, short of a nuclear weapon, this is about as big as weapons get. Okay? A digital renminbi, which, like a e-yuan, okay? It is currently being developed by the Chinese regime through its central bank. Now, you got a lot of people, you got a lot of money, and it takes a lot of yuan to pay for anything, right? It's not a one-to-one exchange. Now, since the yuan is backed by the People's Bank of China, it is a central bank digital currency. This is dangerous because now you have the bank that stores the money responsible for printing the money. That's like the fox guard in the hen house, right? That's like playing the game of Monopoly as the banker, and you have a printer, and you could print the Monopoly money while you're playing the game. That's what it's like. So the pilot tests of the e-yuan are being carried out in more than 20 different Chinese cities. Now, you have to remember that right now, the largest city in the world is Shanghai. Shanghai is the largest city in the world. I've been to Shanghai a couple of times. And when you approach the city to land there, you kind of bank over the bay and turn in, and you fly over city for like 35 minutes. 35 minutes. The the globe is rolling underneath you, and you're still in Shanghai. That's how big this city is. It's ancient, and it's huge. 30 million people. It isn't a simple digital payment app, okay? It's not like Apple Pay or Amazon Pay or Cash App. This is an app that tracks everything you do, including where you are. It includes what your name is, what your medical records are, what your social security number is, what your social score is, what did you tweet, what did you email to a person, what sites have you visited, what books have you bought, what videos have you watched. It tracks all of that. Now, once the Chinese digital money is fully developed and it's made available for everybody outside of China, the Chinese regime is going to seek out certain e-yuan users, such as those in financial trouble, and it's going to corrupt them because they're over the barrel, right? They're on the verge of bankruptcy, and it's going to corrupt them. So, like, imagine if the Chinese government had access to everybody, every person up and down your street, in your neighborhood, everybody, and maybe everybody in Canada as well. And imagine if they could cross-run an algorithm, let's say, and they said, all right, let's look for U.S. government employees that have Tinder and are short on cash, and they're married, and we can corrupt them right now. Yeah, we can, because obviously they've been digitally cheating, and they're on the verge of bankruptcy, so we have leverage on them. Okay, it gives them the ramp to corrupt anybody and everybody around the world that's corruptible, which is a real national security problem. So it's a way they can export digital authoritarianism, and that's a really big concept, digital authoritarianism. And they could do it to you as long as you don't have an extra source of money. Like, you don't have silver, you don't have gold, you don't have weapons or ammunition or alcohol, something that you can trade with, or some skill that you can do that you could trade for something else other than this electronic yuan, right? China's global rollout of its e-yuan, they've already let us know what their specific agenda is. And it is specifically bullet point number 1 to reduce its dependence on the US dollar. It's a term we've been throwing around called de-dollarification, de-dollarization. Jim Willie's talking about it. Others are talking about it now. This is a very real thing. We never thought it would happen. We always thought that, well, oil, we trade in dollars, and dollar is king, and, you know, the dollar is powerful. Yeah, but with the actions of Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals, what they have basically assured is that nobody wants dollars. Nobody wants dollars. Nobody wants the inflation that Biden is sending out there, that today's dollar is only going to be worth 70 cents. Take a quick break. We'll be right back at the top of the hour with hour number 3. We'll be right back. Don't go away.
Hi, my name is Ella, and I'm 10 years old. I'm one of the millions of children born to parents suffering from the sheeple virus. Symptoms include the inability to think for oneself, the attention span of a goldfish, and a strong belief in government and the mainstream media. It is estimated that 1 out of every 2 children are being raised by parents infected with the sheeple virus. But there is a cure. For as little as 19 cents per day, you can become a TFR supporter and help children like me get their daily dose of truth. Together, we will make sure every child has protection from deception.
Doctor, I said, is there some kind of a cognitive test that I could take? Like you'll go person, woman, man, camera, Could you repeat? Person, woman, man, camera, TV. Could you repeat? Person, woman, man, camera, TV. Could you repeat? Person, woman, man, camera, person, woman, man, camera, TV. And they said, wow, that's amazing. The first questions are very easy. The last questions are much more difficult, like a memory question. Okay, now he's asking you other questions, other questions. And then 10 minutes, 15, 20 minutes later, say, remember the first question? Not the first, but the 10th question? Give us that again. Can you do it? And you go, person, woman, man, camera, TV. Wow, that's amazing. Person, woman, man, camera, TV. Could you repeat? Person, woman, man, camera, TV. Could you repeat? Person, woman, man, camera, TV. Could you repeat? Person, woman, man, camera, person, woman, man, camera, TV. And they said, wow, that's amazing. They said nobody gets it in order. It's actually not that easy. Person, woman, man, camera, TV. But for me, it was easy. That's not an easy question, and that's okay. If you repeat them out of order, it's okay. They ask it to you, they give you 5 names and you have to repeat them. But then when you go back about 20, 25 minutes later, and they say, go back to that question and repeat them. Can you do it? And you go, person, woman, man, camera, TV. Wow, that's amazing. Person, woman, man, camera, TV. Could you repeat? Person, woman, man, camera, TV. Could you repeat? Person, woman, man, camera, TV. Could you repeat? Person, woman, man, camera, person, woman, man, camera, TV. And they said, wow, that's amazing.
This is the Truth Frequency Radio Network. TFR.
Truth Frequency Radio.
Here we go, hour 3. All right. Hour number 3. Here we go. So this term de-dollarize is, they've been trying to do it for a long time. They've been trying to do it since the mid-70s. They created something with the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, which is called the SDR. It's a Strategic Drawing Rights Bond. And this is basically a basket with several currencies in it. One of them is the dollar, but for a long time what they've tried to do is capitalize enough gold that they could gold back the SDR. If they could do that, if they could create this new kind of quasi-currency, this hybrid currency, then they could take the dollar out, or they could make the dollar a minor player. That never happened. They weren't able to monetize enough gold. They didn't want to risk the gold. They didn't want to, like Putin has done a mighty thing here. He's made the ruble gold back. Now it takes like 5,000 rubles for an ounce of gold, but hey, that's a starting place. Okay, if gold were to be back the dollar, if Trump were to be made president again, and he said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to go back on the gold standard. Gold would go to $10,000 an ounce. It would go to $10,000 an ounce, but it wouldn't stay there. It would just spike up there. It would stay for a little bit, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 months, something like that, and then it would start back down again, and it will level out. Because gold buys the same amount today that it did in, say, 1950. The gold didn't change value. It was the dollar that changed the value, you see? That's what changed. Gold didn't change value. So, not related to something like land or a car or something like that. Gold stayed the same. And if you think that 87% of the global transactions that China settles, at least in the last few weeks, up to the last few weeks, they've all been settled in dollars, okay? 87% have been settled in dollars. So when the BIS, that's the Bank of International Settlements, settles a transaction between two currencies, it's the dollar. It's the dollar that it's linked to. And that's something they need to well, what you need to realize is China is in a very bad place right now. Yes. The largest city in the world is locked down. Shanghai is not doing 20% of the business it was doing a year ago or even 2 years ago. And the other issue is they've had terrible floods. The people are not as productive as they were. They don't have the fertilizer. Just a lot of different effects on their economy. They are desperately short of energy. They are desperately short of food. They're desperately short of basic materials like wood and pipe and block and all the things you need because China blew it. They built these giant ghost cities and nobody lives in them. They wasted all of their resources building something that never materialized because people aren't there. That commerce isn't there. I've been to these ghost cities. They don't have people in them. Let's see. They have to go buy these things every single day around the world because they don't make them in China. The only things they make in China are stuff that we use, stuff that the EU uses, stuff that South Africa uses or South America uses. They don't make stuff that China will use. China is not putting up no freaking windmills. China has no solar farms. Screw that. They make the solar panels that we buy. China's burning coal, baby. That's what they burn. Cheap, dirty coal. Their plants are not even that clean. And they're building about a plant a year. It's quite filthy what they're doing to the planet. But that's because they have coal. See, nobody trusts the Chinese yuan because it's artificially manipulated. They have what we call a closed capital account. Okay? It's when you have your bond holder, Evergreen, when they go under, that's your real estate bond. That's your real estate market. Now, what normally happens is the government steps in and bails out that bond. Okay, that way the people that are holding that property don't lose their value, and that way the bondholders don't lose their money. But that's not what happened. The state just ignored it. They just said, so what? So the bond company went under. So their real estate prices dropped through the floor. And everybody that thought they had equity now don't because they now owe more on their property than what it's worth. And so what do they have to do? What is the solution? They have to use their U.S. dollars to get out of it. And they don't want to do that. Now, here's the thing. More than 80 countries in the world, including the U.S., they're exploring this central bank digital currency. And this is dangerous. It's very dangerous. Because what happens if you go to one currency globally and it has this capability? I mean, you're driving your car along and all of a sudden it suddenly acts like it runs out of gas and you coast over to the side of the emergency lane and a message comes up on your digital display. And it says, if you don't go delete these 2 tweets and this Instagram post, your car's not going to run. We've turned your car off because of your social media posts. What are you going to do? Well, you're going to whip your phone out. You're going to delete those posts. And as soon as they verify that, your chip in your car turns back on again and you can drive. You think I'm kidding? I know you don't think I'm kidding. Because I'm not. So, last month, Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals signed an executive order. And it was on digital assets. And I have to use that broad title because Joe Biden doesn't know what he's signing. Joe Biden doesn't even know what if he has his underwear on straight or not. If the label's in the front, he doesn't know where he's at or what he's doing. He does his best to read through the teleprompter and any questions at all. He can't even read off the card to answer. Okay, he's in really, really big trouble. So he doesn't write these laws. Congress doesn't write these laws. He doesn't know what he's signing. These laws are created by think tanks that are organized inside the bowels of the global syndicate. So they write an executive order, and it's on digital assets. Digital assets. In other words, the money you have in your checking account, the money you have in your savings account, the money you have in your dang cyber your cyber securities, your crypto, okay? The president was placing urgency on research and development of a U.S.-based central bank digital currency, and issuing one was deemed in the national interest. No, it's not. It's not in the national interest. It's in the interest of the global syndicate. So several U.S. lawmakers have been keen to see the threat posed by this e-yuan, and they're going to try to beat him to the punch. Last year, French Hill, who's a Republican from Arkansas, a congressman, and Jim Himes, who's a Democrat from Connecticut, they introduced the 21st Century Dollar Act, H.R. 3506. And this act would require the U.S. Treasury Department to include in a report for Congress any risks to the U.S. dollar posed by the digital yuan. It sounds okay on the surface, but listen. Also last month, Senator Marsha Blackburn, she's a Republican from Tennessee. She's quite outspoken. You see her all the time. She had 8 of her Republican colleagues, and they said they introduced the Say No to the Silk Road Act, which is Senate Bill 3784. Now, we've had Lyndon LaRoche people on this program before. I don't agree with them, but I let them say their piece, and they're big proponents to this Silk Road. They think the Silk Road is the answer to everything that ails the world. Lyndon LaRoche was a huge supporter of the Silk Road Initiative. If this Say No to the Silk Road Act was enacted, it would require the U.S. Commerce Department and the U.S. Trade Representative's Office to file reports on the e-yuan, which is coming. They don't have any choice. They don't have any choice. Also, the U.S. State Department would be required to put a warning on its website, and it would warn us, the U.S. citizens who are traveling to China, about the dangers of the digital yuan according to the text of the bill. There are some senators that you'll see in the coming weeks, and they're going to launch legislation to outlaw the use of the e-yuan. And this is huge because basically it's an advanced sanction against China. It's an advanced sanction against China. And I believe that those legislations are going to happen. I think that's going to happen. This advanced Chinese sanction is going to happen. If we don't ban it, it means our currency is going to be hit, and hit hard. If we do ban it, it's going to create conflict because it's going to isolate China. They're not going to be able to trade, especially the citizens of China are not going to be able to trade with anybody in the world, well, anybody in the West, anybody in the United States, because the e-yuan is not going to be accepted in our commerce. And this is a big deal. It's going to act like an advanced sanction on China. So China is going to be between a rock and a hard place, and when they are, traditionally, when they are between this rock and a hard place, they expand. They expand. That means that they invade other countries like North Korea, Taiwan. Okay, get it through your heads. They need money. That's why they took Hong Kong 10 years early, because they were out of money. Trump had succeeded in getting these trade deals with them. They were not getting the value-added tax that they were getting before. They weren't selling us stuff cheap and then putting huge tariffs on anything we send them. That was over with. Trump brought them to their knees, and they were doing business with us on a level playing field. Well, they can't handle that. They can't do level playing field. They have to have an advantage. And that's one of the reasons why the world was attacked with the pandemic. It was to smash the Trump economy and stop that from happening. All right, let's talk a little bit about being Shanghaied. Do you remember stories of being Shanghaied? You know, you'd be like in Maripol, or you're in some foreign country, and all of a sudden you get banged on the head, and the next thing you know, you wake up on a ship somewhere, and you're a ship's mate, and you're pulling rope and trying to get 3 meals a day and not get tossed to the sharks. It's called being Shanghaied. We'll make no doubt about it, Earth Explorers. Something is very wrong in Shanghai. Okay, these COVID lockdowns, they don't make any damn sense. They didn't work here. They don't work there. There's no science to back it. 30 million people. That's a lot of people. If they get mad, that's a lot of people. Now, here's what the outbreak looks like. Even if we're to believe the numbers coming out of China, you're going to have to excuse me for being frank, but I just don't believe them. I don't believe the numbers. China has always lied, and they're continuing to lie about everything since the beginning of this pandemic. And they certainly don't have the rest of the world's best interest in mind now that they're basically fighting a proxy war against the West. Anything that we're against, they're against. Anything we're for, they're against. Because they want to wear us down. Okay, and they've made the public statements that they just want us to die. Can't you 335 million Americans, can't you just die? Just walk away. Leave the keys on the kitchen table. Leave the keys on the dash. Leave the money in the bank and just die. Okay, we'll be by soon enough to take it where you left it. Okay, that's their philosophy. That's what they want. Now, I believe the numbers in Shanghai are being exaggerated, either one way or the other, okay? And in order to meet the needs of whatever agenda the CCP is trying to push, and I haven't really nailed that down yet, not when it comes to Shanghai, but I've been there several times and I know how busy this city is. Here's the deal. We're 2 years into the pandemic, okay? We already know most of the fraud that's associated with this, right? We know that ivermectin and HCQ work as effective therapeutics. We know that zinc and vitamin C and D3, we know all these are effective. We know worldwide, if you end up in the hospital with COVID, you got something wrong with you. Way more than COVID or something lacking in the head. Because there are a dozen ways to beat this disease, a dozen ways to keep yourself out of the hospital. And they're not expensive either. So we have enough knowledge now to keep us free. We don't need the jab, and we don't need to go to the hospital. We don't need boosters. We got plenty of therapeutics. We already have this number. So the actions that China is taking to implement this round of lockdowns in Shanghai, it doesn't make sense. Okay, it's very Orwellian, it's dystopian, it's like out of some kind of, movie set. Here's a good example of how nutso this is, okay? All international flights to and from Shanghai have been halted. Really? Really? A city of 30 million people? You're going to halt all flights to and from. Roads to the city's 2 airports closed. The government performed PCR tests on 25.7 million people. Really? Once, maybe multiple times. And the government has not allowed residents to go to the grocery stores. They're sort of delivering groceries to them, whatever that means. The government has put together tens of thousands of cots in 2 convention centers as quarantine centers, but they don't have any showering facilities in them. Like, you can go there, you can sleep, you can poop in a bucket, but you can't take a bath. That makes freaking no sense to me. They're not allowed to go to the grocery, not allowed to take a shower. And China is also, once again, they're sealing people up in their homes. They're welding the doors shut. People are going to die by the hundreds of thousands in their homes. And these videos that are getting out, they're sneaking out on social media. It's eerie. It's spooky. You know, you hear the recordings of these, and they have these huge, tall apartment complexes. They're like 28, 30 stories high, and they're like whole city blocks. And there are people hanging out the balconies, screaming. I don't know what they're saying because it's all Chinese. But you hear 100,000 people do that. It's unnerving. It's haunting. It's haunting. There's an innumerable list of very disturbing things about this shutdown in Shanghai. It felt like, heading into the spring, at least for here, COVID's over. Nobody's wearing masks. Nobody's social distancing. Nobody's sick. Nobody's in the hospital. I mean, it's done. It's over. People that are jabbed are falling like rain everywhere. But now the therapeutics are helping those people as well. So they're going to be able to overcome the spike proteins that are clogging up their systems. The mask mandates, the vaccine mandate, they're all gone. Nobody has them anymore. So why this crazy overreaction in Shanghai? Why continue the country's completely irrational and inane, like COVID zero policy at this point? It makes no sense. Not even for China. It just doesn't make sense. The country's extremely dramatic and overzealous response feels so odd, so twisted and abnormal that it made me wonder if it's like a state-sponsored power grab. But I don't see how that really makes sense because, what power does Shanghai actually have? It's the biggest city in the world, but when you're that kind of giant and you begin to stumble, it's a mighty fall. It's not like something you can catch yourself and, right yourself. You're so big that if anything stops the flow of cash in your city, the whole thing is going to self-destruct. It's like L.A. It's just, except L.A. is a lot more versatile, or I would say varied in its industry. And I also wondered if the drastic measures, which are kind of similar to what we saw in the fall of 2020. Remember how we locked down to flatten the curve and all this stuff, and we were saying that infection equals death. You remember all that? It was in fall of 2020. We didn't know. Nobody knew if ivermectin worked or HCQ worked, or we didn't know what Regeneron was. We knew the president got it, but we didn't know it was available. Nobody there is really thinking responsibly, I think. And you think they're intelligent, they're smart. These people went to college. They have to understand. And yesterday on Twitter, there were 2 alternate explanations. One is from Quoth the Raven. He said, the COVID response in Shanghai is so insane and asinine, given how dangerous COVID is, it's starting to feel like either A, or one, the government is using COVID to implement Orwellian rules it had long planned, or There's something about this virus they know and we don't. See? Because they're not letting it out. They're not telling us. And I've talked about why, I think China's breaking off the monetary system because they're in huge financial trouble. You think we're in debt. Their what's called debt to GDP ratio. Ours is about 125, 127, something like that. Russia's is about like 32. It's really low. But China's like 325. 325% of global of their domestic GDP. They can't get out of it. They're so far beyond a depression, it blows your mind. They're just artificially not letting it happen. So what if China wants to not only exert its influence by backing its currency, but also by keeping its production means on a tighter leash? More for the benefit of its own people and less for the benefits of Americans exporting dollars. How could China show the rest of the world in a passive, non-confrontational way exactly how much power they have over our quality of life? You remember when all the boats were off the shore of Long Beach and theoretically, we can't unload them because we don't have enough truck drivers? That was bullshit. I knew crane operators in Long Beach that were only working 4 hours a day. I'm going, what do you mean you're only working 4 hours a day? The boats are stacked up for 20 miles out to sea. Get these boats in and run the cranes longer. And they couldn't because the union had told them to slow down unloading the ships. To me, it looked like a blockade, not of Long Beach, of China. Because if you could stop that stuff from unloading in the United States, you're stopping China's cash flow. Forget about ours. I mean, we can do without, Tylenol and diapers and plastic bags and all the things that were on those boats. We could do without that. But China can't do without the commerce. It was a Chinese blockade. And I feel like this is Chinese blockade too. You're blocking ships in the harbor of Shanghai, and you're not allowing them to do commerce. Why would they do that? Why would China allow that? They think, if what I'm reading is correct here, they think that by stopping their commerce, they're actually starving us, holding back chips from us, so we can't finish our new vehicles in this country. They think they're hurting us worse than it's hurting them. Does that sound insane? Let's talk about it right after the break. Final break coming up. More America Free Radio right after this. Please don't go away. I appreciate you being here with me tonight.
There's magic in good communications. There's magic in the human touch of words. It was said the pen is mightier than the sword. That's true. Words are powerful. Words are almost godlike. I'm an amateur on some of these studies, but an ancient verse says, God was the Word, and the Word was God. Wow, powerful language to illustrate how powerful the Word is. Words can be life-changing. Words can give life. Words can formulate ideologies. We have to find ways to give words to that so that it can be understood. Words form the pictures of our minds. Words help to translate an interchange of thought and ideas between human beings. So one of the most important skills is the skill of good communication. Learning words, phrases, sentences, whether it's written or spoken. Language is so powerful in affecting our lives and using those skills to affect other people's lives.
Discover the extraordinary powers of intuitive healing with pain transmutation, a method of holistic healing for the human soul, body, mind, and emotions. If you are looking for answers and a deep understanding of how to help yourself and the people around you to live a happier, healthier life, this is the right place for you. Learn how to read your soul's history in the Akashic Records. Remove negative energy attachments from your astral body and start the process of inner and outer pain transmutation. Join Pain Transmutation Community to get started on the path of intuitive healing. Change your energetic state. Manifest new and exciting experiences. Re-energize your life and build inspiring connections with others in our community.
For 5,000 years, the world was ruled with wooden ships by one man. 242 years ago, a small group of free men crafted a new nation built on liberty and freedom. Global elites have been fighting to destroy this new nation called America ever since. Based on actual events, Charm of Favor tells a true story of how they corrupted the election system. They infiltrated federal agencies and murdered witnesses, judges, and even presidents to keep from being caught. Now, the largest and wealthiest crime syndicate the world has ever known has been drawn out of the shadows. They have killed hundreds of Americans and recently attempted to assassinate half our congressmen. Still, they escape arrest through an almost supernatural charm of favor. Read Charm of Favor and be prepared to open your eyes to what may lie just around the corner. Charm of Favor is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
No hate, no hype, no fear. Real people, real radio.
Well, anyway, it's something to keep your eye on, because if I had to bet it all today on why China's locking down Shanghai the way that it is, I would take one of these three scenarios over the actual implementation of the world's most irrational health policy. Number one, the CCP is simply trying to usurp more power over its own people, because the CCP has an enemy way bigger than us. And that enemy is the Chinese people. You agree with me? I really think so, because I think the Chinese people, and I deal with them all the time, they feel capitalistic. They do. They feel like they're earning more money, they're smarter, they have more international relationships, they're doing business. Their companies are doing business internationally, the companies that they work for. They're dealing with us, they're dealing with others. And they feel capitalistic. They feel like they're self-empowered. And the one thing that they don't like, and I hear it all the time, they don't like the power the CCP has over them. They don't like it. They want to be free. Even if they can't come to America, even if they can't, travel to Las Vegas and gamble with their friends, they still want to be free. Because they see it on TV, they see it in the movies, they see it, when basketball teams come and they see how wealthy and how free these people are, because money is freedom. It makes the CCP obsolete. By the way, thank you very much, Ron, for that. Very kind super chat there, or top chat in YouTube. I appreciate that more than you know. And I think Rumble has the same thing. I don't know. I've never experienced it before, so I don't know. But thank you very much. That helps keeps the lights on. I appreciate it. Number two is there's something about COVID that China knows and the rest of the world still doesn't know. I'm not sure about that because I trade emails all the time with people that I work with, people that I communicate with. And if there was something, because we were locked down and now we're not, if there was something, they would let me know. They would say, hey, watch out, or this one's different, or they would say something. There would be a way of saying it, that it wouldn't be monitored by some government algorithm. I don't know about that one. And number 3 is maybe more complicated. It's that China's looking for an excuse to slow its production in a continuance of this Chinese blockade because they think it hurts us. They think we can't live without their stuff. And I got to tell you, I have one company that we use commutators. Commutator is the moving part inside a motor. And it's not a big motor. They're little motors, but the commutators have to be wound. They have to be machined. They have to be wound. And we don't have commutator winding companies in this country anymore. We do for big motors, 400, 500, 600,000 horsepower, 2,000 horsepower. Yes, we do, but not for little ones. That was all those machines, all that technology left this country during the Obama administration and has not been back. So this company effectively can't sell product because we have to place orders like 10, 12 weeks in advance and pay for it, by the way, in advance with China. And then we cross our fingers. We cross our fingers because we don't know. We've spent the money, but we don't know if we're ever going to get the commutators. It's unreliable. We don't know. Delivery time is unknown. And I got to tell you, I have a lot of experience international drop shipping. Do it every single day, every day. It's not as reliable as you think. We have a 99.5% delivery reputation, but it's not all on time. We were getting our deliveries down to 10 days, 2 weeks, maybe 2.5 weeks. Sometimes they go 8 weeks, which is crazy. You can't do business that way, but this is the way it is. It's just the reality. Are our customers happy? No. Are we happy? Absolutely not. We demand perfection from our organizations, and we make sure that all of our communications, all of our algorithms, everything that we translate our label systems so that it meets the international shipping and shipper companies, so everything lines up right. All that's correct. We do it every single day, hundreds and hundreds of times a month. But it's unreliable. You can't rely on it. It's not the way the West does business. It's not the way we do business. We are very, very focused on quality. And quality includes on-time delivery, damn it. And if we don't get it on time, it hurts everybody. Amazon Prime is not Amazon Prime anymore. They say they're going to deliver in a certain amount of time, and they don't. So what? What can you do? You get it when you get it. Really? Is that what we tell our customers? Oh, you buy from us, you spend your money from us, your money's in our bank, you'll get it when you get it. That doesn't work. That doesn't fly. So is China trying to slow that kind of business down? Because I will tell you exactly what will happen. You could mark this in stone and gold plate it. We will take the business back. We will start winding commutators in this country. We will start making chips in this country. We will start making rubber mats and wire and rubber tubing. We're going to start making all of that again in this country. It's going to be American made. It might be more expensive than what we could buy from China 2 years ago, but at least we get it, and we get it on time, and it's reliable. Either way, these three things that I just described, either way, the more I see out of that country with every passing day, hell, every passing hour, the more it becomes clear to me that something is very rotten in the state of Shanghai with this latest COVID lockdown. It does not make any sense unless they're just trying to kill off a bunch of people, which I guess you could put down as number 4. But who in the world is going to publish that? Who in the world is going to actually believe that a country wants to kill off its own population? Really? Seriously? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, you got to ask these questions. All right, let's talk a little bit about. I got a story on. Let's talk a little bit about Mariupol because the United States received a formal note from Russia this week, and I read it several times, and I can't translate Russian, but it's been translated into English, and I can't believe that the translation would be that far off, but because it's warning that by shipping the most sensitive weapons systems to Ukraine, the U.S. and the Pan-European Army, which likes to call itself NATO, but it really isn't, it's the Pan-European Army, they're adding fuel to this conflict that should have been over already, and it will be by the end of this month if they don't mess it up. And they could be risking what they call unpredictable consequences. Now, I don't need to see by a show of hands or in either one of the chat rooms here, which we get them all here except for Rockfin. I don't know why Rockfin and Rumble chat rooms are not hooked up to Restream. But if you guys are listening, that would be a very good thing, okay? It would be a very good thing. Do you have any idea what unpredictable circumstances might be? Unpredictable consequences? The diplomatic démarqué follows a call to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who was, by the way, stoned out of his gourd today when he released his recording. I mean, I think he was on coke. No, couldn't have been coke. I know what people look like on coke. He wasn't on coke. He was on something else. This guy was blazing. Yeah, I think he was actually blazing, if you know what that means. Those of you that are in the recreational drug community, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Volodymyr Zelensky was blazing when he put out this recording, and it went out to President Joe Biden, and after this warning, the White House announced, in addition to $800 million in weapons, ammunition, and other security assistance, that would be heading to Zelensky's way. And the new package includes not pistols, not rifles, not shotguns, not grenades, which is what Jen Psaki said. No. This package includes 155 howitzers, 155 millimeter howitzers. These are 6-inch diameter shells, okay? A serious upgrade in long-range artillery to match Russian systems. Also, coastal defense drones. Yeah, this is a big upgrade. $1 million drones. Armored vehicles. Portable anti-aircraft and anti-tank weapons. And millions of rounds of ammunition. I will bring a little bit from the past for you. Let's go back to the year 1915, shall we? Yeah, this is about a year and a half after the Federal Reserve Act was approved, okay? Woodrow Wilson really wants to get into World War I. He wants to get jiggy with it. And he can't just go declare war on Germany. It just doesn't work that way. You can't just go to Congress and say, I'm declaring a war on Germany today. You got to have some motivation. You got to have something going. So what they did is they loaded chock full ocean liners with passengers and bullets, bombs, weapons. And then, instead of keeping it secret, like, okay, we're going to go supply the Brits with this ammunition. No. They announced it. Woodrow Wilson leaked it to the Germans. And what happened was the subs who were patrolling those waters sunk the Lusitania. Killed everybody on board. Of course, you lost all the ammunition, but that's what they were doing. They were goading Germany so that Congress would approve declaring war on Germany. Woodrow Wilson wanted into the war really bad. So the United States has also facilitated the shipment to Ukraine of long-range air defense systems, including Slovakia's shipment of Russian-manufactured Soviet-era S-300 launchers. And the S-300s is not trash. These are pretty good anti-aircraft missiles. They're radar-based, but you can't hardly get away from them. They're very, very fast, and they carry a lot of firepower. And the best thing about them is they're mobile. You can drive them around. You can hide them under trees. They're very hard to detect. Once they're energized and you open that tube and fire, it's game on, baby. That jet's got to get out of the way. Helicopters don't stand a chance against the S-300. In exchange, the administration announced last week the United States is deploying a Patriot missile system to Slovakia and consulting with Slovakia on a long-term replacement. Now, the good news is that Patriot missiles are only defensive. Okay, they can't be used against aircraft, but they can be used against missiles. Fast-moving missiles are easy for these things to counteract. They kind of work like a big shotgun blast. They go up there and poof, blow up like a firework and take out the incoming missile when it's approaching. Now, according to Russian Foreign Ministry spokesman Maria Zakharova, the diplomatic démarqué was one of several similar notes regarding arms shipments to Ukraine that were sent to all countries. Stop it. Okay, the note was titled, On Russia's Concerns in the Context of Massive Supplies of Weapons and Military Equipment to the Kiev Regime. Additionally, Russia accused its opposition of violating the rigorous principles that govern the transfer of weapons to conflict zones, stating Ukraine's allies are discounting the threat of high-precision weapons falling into the hands of not Ukrainian army, but radical nationalists, extremists, even outside Ukraine. Because you know where these weapons are going? These people are hungry. These officers that receive this stuff, they're starving. So what do they do when these weapons come in? They're brand spanking new. They sell them into the black market. Now, where do you think Stinger missiles are going to end up? Where do you think man-pads? A man-pad is a shoulder-fired missile that can shoot down a jet. It can shoot down a jet up to 30,000 feet in altitude. It's a badass weapon. And Libya had a bunch of them. And the CIA went there to try to stop those weapons after Hillary assassinated Gaddafi and wiped out his regime and destroyed his cities. These man-pads were making their way on the black market. And who was buying them? Well, Hillary Clinton was buying them. She was paying top dollar, loading them on ships and taking them to Syria to give to ISIS and Al-Qaeda to unseat Bashar al-Assad. Man-pad is a bad weapon. Very accurate, very simple to use, and very rugged. The CIA was there to find them and destroy them. But they couldn't find them because Hillary was bidding against them. Yeah, it was bad. It was really bad. So if man-pads are being dumped into Poland and being dumped into Romania and somehow making their way on the black market, which doesn't take much because these people are really hungry, they could be sold anywhere, anytime, even after they're deployed in the field. Those guys can run and they can buy their freedom with a man-pad. These things cost about $100,000 a copy. It's a big missile system. It's a shoulder-fired missile system, but very sophisticated. You know where those weapons are going to end up? They're going to end up at the end of the runway of a European airport, or somewhere in Norway, or somewhere in New Jersey. You see what's happening? They're making an international crisis. And what the Russians are telling us privately is exactly what we've been telling the world publicly for a while, that the massive amount of assistance that we're providing the Ukrainian Azovs is providing is extraordinarily effective, but it is being dumped onto the black market. Former National Security Council Director for Russian, Ukrainian, and Eurasian Affairs, Andrew Weiss, is reminded of a speech given by Putin back on the February morning of the invasion start. That was February 24th. And a previous warning that nations in the West would face consequences greater than any you have faced in history should they interfere in the conflict. What I'm seeing there is the same thing you're seeing. Putin is drawing a red line across the street, and we're crossing it. That is not good. That puts the Pentagon directly in the crosshairs. They're the ones that are approving this. They're going against military advice. These are politicians. These are not elected officials. These are people that are bureaucrats inside our agency government, and they are crossing the line. And I don't think Putin bluffs. I don't think he bluffs. An attack such as that marks a very important escalatory move. First and foremost, because it represents a threat to the West if they aren't able to keep supplies flowing into Ukraine, which by extension might diminish Ukraine's capacity for self-defense. I think this is a very wrong way to think of this. Weiss is opening his mouth and he's getting us in enormous trouble. In enormous trouble. Pentagon spokesman John Kirby, also, he is trying to get us in a world war. Listen to what he said. We don't take any movement of weapons and systems going into Ukraine for granted. Not on any given day. The new arms package brings the total cost of U.S. military aid to Ukraine since the start of the invasion, which was February 24th. That's what they call the invasion. To $3.2 billion. Now, the Ukraine Azovs have been beaten the holy shit out of Ukrainians since 2014. We've been feeding them the weapons to do that. Apartment buildings, hospitals, schools, buses. Between 14,000 and 40,000 Ukrainians have lost their lives because of weapons that we sent in there. Putin is there to put a stop to that. Since February 24th, we've sent in $3.2 billion more. I guarantee that didn't make it into the battlefield. It's going onto the black market. It's causing a big problem. Yeah, I agree, Hairraiser, that is exactly what they want. But Putin's pissed. The rest of the world's pissed. China's pissed. And Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals are marching us straight into a conflict we can't win. We can't win. And if we did win, it would be wrong. All right. We've got about 5 minutes. And I want to lighten this a little bit by telling you that doing an act of kindness can actually make you feel good about yourself, and a new study suggests it also benefits the brains of everyone living under one roof. Researchers from the University of Texas at Dallas report that teaching and practicing kindness at home improved parents' resilience and children's empathy. Because both resilience and empathy use different cognitive skills, such as responding well to stressors or considering different perspectives. The researchers suggest kindness can improve a person's cognition, what you're aware of. And if you're aware of your fellow man, you help your fellow man. The Children's Kindness Network is an online kindness training program. It enrolled 38 mothers and their 3 to 5-year-old children. The program included Kind Minds with Muzi, with 5 modules featuring a digital cow who explained creative exercises parents can use with their kids to learn about kindness. I'm all for this. We should become a kinder people to one another. In times of stress, take a moment to practice kindness for yourself and then model it for your children. And it can boost your own resilience and improve your child's pro-social behaviors. Do not underestimate the power of kindness, because it can ultimately change and shape brain health. How do we do that? Well, it's kind of easy to do with people that you know, that you don't have any fear of. But most people, for some reason, they have a fear, they have anxiety about being kind or about making contact with people they don't know. Like when you go to the Minute Mart and you buy your gas and then you walk inside to get a coffee and a sandwich or some gum or something, the person behind the counter doesn't see you. They see the transaction, they scan those in, they know the words to say, they see the green check mark, and off you go. Break that cycle by making contact with that person. Eye contact's good, but at least the voice. Have a great day. Thank you so much. Have a good weekend. You're doing a great job. Anything, an act of kindness to that person. Once you do this 2 or 3 times in a week, it'll come easy to you. And then I practice this thing because we teach the Merkaba meditation, which essentially says that when we spin the Merkaba up and we create this energetic state that's centered on our spine, we create a disk of energy that's 27 feet in diameter, 13 and a half feet from our spine in all directions. Anybody that walks inside that, once it's spun up to energy, feels it. We are biological transducers and we're sensitive to that energy. They feel it. So I teach my direct reports and anybody that will listen to me a principle I call S10G5. It means anybody gets within 10 feet of you, you're passing one another in the plant or whatever, smile. Just smile. Because if you don't, if you keep your face flat, they could be crushed. I just walked by Brooks and he didn't give me any face. I think I'm in trouble. I think I'm going to be fired. I'm going to start looking for a job. You have no idea the anxiety that creates. Smile. If they get within 5 feet of you, some sort of audible greeting. Howdy. How you doing today? Good to see you. Something. It's almost Friday. Anything. Some kind of verbal contact. S10G5. Smile within 10 feet, greet within 5 feet. Make it a habit. This is the kindness that we can put in practical use. And I don't mean saying hello to everybody you see in the mall, but you're going to know. You're going to know. Interact with people that way. And you'll be surprised. It will create momentum for you. See you Wednesday night at 8 o'clock.